It was a good week for us last week, a good win for our football program, a good win for our team and our fans. There's a lot of excitement last night at practice amongst the troops. Obviously the players felt very good about the victory, and the coaches. So we've got to get back to work tomorrow. I think this is an important week, and from a standpoint of staying focused on Kansas and our ability to travel and play well and continue with what we started in August. So we'll be back at it tomorrow, and looking forward to another good week. Get these guys ready to play up in Lawrence.
Coach Gundy, talk a little about Sunday. I know that you practice on Sunday, you're off on Monday, and practice again on Tuesday. What do you try to accomplish on Sunday?
Well, Sunday is a opportunity for the players to come over and get treatment, and we run them, and we spend just a little bit of time on the next opponent, but we're only on the field for about 38 minutes.
Coach, going into the season, the expectations kind of outside of Stillwater weren't really high for you guys, and among the coaches in the Big 12, you guys weren't picked that high. And now you've kind of changed into a team that's a top 10 team, and everyone around the nation is really taking notice. Do you think that's adding more pressure to your guys, or how is the team kind of adjusted into that?
Well, they're handling the situation very well. I don't think there's any question that with what goes on with the technology and coverage of college football, that each week there's pressure. And I said this earlier on my Big 12 conference, that in the sport of football is different, because if you lose a game, it can affect you for the entire season. Basketball, you can lose 3 or 4 games, and 5 games still be a national champion. In baseball, we had a team 2 or 3 years ago, I think Fresno or somebody, that lost 9 games and won a national championship. Well, football is not that way. So you take a chance every Saturday, and that's why it's important to stay focused, to prepare, and go play.
Is that one reason you think that your guys hopefully won't be overlooking Kansas this weekend?
Well, I'm not sure. I wish I had those answers. I think I know the only thing that we believe in is hard work, and reiterate to them how important it is that they only get 1 day a week to prepare for that phase of what we're going to see on Saturday. For example, Kansas. You get an hour 40 on Tuesday and an hour and a half Wednesday, and then they get an hour on Thursday, and that wraps it up. So each day, if they don't take advantage of it, then they shouldn't expect to play well on Saturday.
Mike, you've said often this year this isn't your most talented team. Do you have to rethink that now a little?
No, we were much talented last year, much more talented last year than we are right now.
Where?
Well, defensive line, at the cornerback position, at the wide receiver position, and the offensive line position. What's that?
Not after Des left.
Well, after Des left, yeah. But going into the season last year, we're just not as talented individually with this football team as we were last year. I mean, you had a first round pick at left tackle. You had when Des was here, you had could have been a top 5 pick at wideout. You had Parrish Cox that should have been no later than a 2nd round pick. Keith Toston made it in the NFL. Somebody else is doing good. I can't remember. Get them all. Zach Robinson now is playing in the NFL. So
does this speak to the chemistry of this team then?
Well, I think why this team's having success is because they, one, have good chemistry. We've had good leadership, and I've expressed that for the last 2 months. I was concerned about losing so many starters, but Ori's been really good for us. If you watch him play, you can tell he's been a great leader on the field and in the locker room. Markel and Johnny have grown up and developed into a leadership role. Broderick has developed into that role. Whedon has done it by play. Kendall has done it by play because they don't really talk much. And Blackman's work ethic and practice has been a positive role for our team because he's making a lot of plays, and the other guys see him making a lot of plays, and they see him practice hard, and so that all fits together. And then we've gotten good play and good leadership out of our punter and kicker. And so for that reason, the young guys who've had to play more than what we would have wanted them to early in their career have had success, and they're just kind of buying in, and so it's worked out well for us.
Mike, can you look back now at the fact that Broderick was thrown into playing in the bowl game last year and look at that and say that was a real key part of his development, even though it was just one game?
Broderick is an interesting person. He broke his arm last year, and we didn't have him for like 2 months, and then he just started practicing like a week before the bowl game, and was just kind of going through the motions. But he's an intelligent young man, so he's aware of what's going on. And then we had great concerns about playing him in that game in the Cotton Bowl, and graded out as high as anybody on the field, played very well. And so I think he's a good example of somebody that just kind of stays in the flow mentally. And then fortunately enough, they weren't on the field a lot in that game, so he didn't get exhausted physically. But there's no question that had to help his confidence coming into the season, just being able to perform at a pretty high level on such short notice.
That leadership you talked about a minute ago, is that maybe what's impressed you with this bunch the most, or something else?
Their willingness to do whatever it takes to have success, their accountability, and I'm convinced that the accountability that the players have to each other, and then that the accountability the coaches have to the players will represent victories more than ever in college football that I've been in at 20 years, more so than ever now, because of all the outside situations and hype that goes on with college football. I mean, you can probably go over here and turn the TV on any cable and flip through channels, and there's be 2 or 3 or 4 talk shows going on right now about upcoming games. And so because of all that, there's a lot more distractions than there ever has been. And if you don't have good leadership and the players if they don't get it about what's really important, it can cause a lot of situations that you don't want amongst your team. I've coached on teams where the players never really got along, and so at the end of the day, they didn't really care if they won or not. They just go home, go back to their dorm, and hang out.
Mike, doesn't that make your job, or the coaching staff, a little easier when you have that high quality of leadership and strong leaders that are upperclassmen as well?
Yeah, it does, but it also starts with the coaches. It starts with Coach Young and Coach Holverson and Coach DeForest, and then the assistant coaches. And there's just a chain of command, and everybody has a role from top to bottom, and the message has to be the same. There can't be anybody that's communicating with the players one way and somebody else another, and then you create confusion and they don't know which direction to go. Then your players have to buy in, and then they have to be the ones to police the team. They got to do it themselves. And that's where we've made strides in the last 6 weeks with our football team. One, we've been fortunate enough to stay somewhat healthy on defense to where the young players can mature now. They're 10 games into it now. So they're freshmen, but they're still 10 games into it. And 2, the veteran players have essentially brought the younger players along and have coached them. And they're monitoring and handling some of the issues that coaches normally have to concern themselves with throughout the season. And we haven't really delegated much time to that because some of our veteran players have handled those issues for us.
Coach, would you feel comfortable saying that Joseph Randall's been the most valuable freshman up to this point?
In our organization?
Right.
Joe Randall's been good. Sean Lewis has been good. Who else would be there? I mean,
Gilbert.
Well, Gilbert got hurt and we lost him for a couple weeks, but those guys have been really good. But Sean has been consistent, and Joe Randall's been very consistent.
Mike, since that Nebraska game, you guys have been really dominant on defense in the first half. You've allowed just 10 points over the first, past 3 games. Mm-hmm. What's going on? Why you guys been able to shut people down in the first half and getting off these quick starts?
Well, 2 things, and again, not to repeat myself, but Ori Lemon has really played well and has been a great leader for us. You could bring him over and tell him that anything you want, he'd go do it. He wouldn't question anything, he'd just go do it. And the young players, when we were talking 2 months ago, they were only 2 games into their career. Now they're 8 games in, or 10 games into their career, so they're going to get a little better every game. Very similar to the maturation process. I don't know if that's correct, but that's a big word for me, but the process that Brandon Whedon's gone through, he's improved mentally in the last 6 weeks. Just gotten better and better just because he's played more games. I was visiting with somebody earlier today, and there's a lot of talk about him. He's only played 10 games. He's just like a freshman. So he continues to get a little better. Well, that's the same thing that happens with the defense.
Mike, some teams are invincible at home, really struggle on the road. I'm not going to mention any names, but your team is looking to go 5-0 this season on the road, 7-1 over the past 2 seasons. What is it about this team that makes it so successful on the road?
Again, if I had those answers exact, I wish I had them. I just don't. Other than I think that the focus and preparation that we try to provide for our players, that we just try to express to them the importance of you have to practice well and you have to get a certain amount accomplished every day. And then you have to be better tomorrow than you are today. And then we talked 4 or 5, 6 weeks ago about we had a lot of areas we needed improvement in. Our coverage units weren't very good. Our return blocking units weren't very good on special teams. We weren't tackling very well. We just had, Whedon had to improve. And we wanted to be better each week instead of trying to fix everything in 1 week. Just a steady process of try to get better each week. And I think they've bought into that, and that's the reason why that they've been able to play well, whether we've played at home or on the road.
Talk a little about the Kansas Jayhawks.
They're obviously, I'm sure Coach Gill would want them to have played better, and I haven't read any comments or heard much from up there, but I've watched them play on tape, and offensively they've played a couple quarterbacks. Number 20 for them is a good player. He makes a lot of plays. Does a nice job in the return game, and he's been explosive for them on offense. And one thing I've noticed that they've been able to do is they've been able to find ways to run the ball. Each week they come up with a scheme or a way to give themselves an opportunity to run the ball, and they've done a good job with that. This week is a week that it's more important for us to get better in all areas, and then go play our game. I know that they'll have those guys fired up, and opportunity to get a team that's coming in that's ranked, and all those different situations that I'm sure that they'll try to use to their advantage. So we need to play our game in all 3 phases and have a good plan and go up and compete.
Do you talk to them at all that a win Saturday gets you a part of your goal of a share of a Big 12 South title at all?
We haven't talked about anything other than the next practice in the next game, and I've said this, but we're not good enough to really look beyond anything. We've been fortunate, and our players have competed and we've played well, but we're just not good enough, and we don't have enough depth to look much past the next practice or the next game.
Are you thinking about bringing a cobbler in to repair Dan Bailey's shoe?
I didn't know anything about that until last night. My sons were asking me about it. I didn't have a clue that there was an issue with his shoe. I'm going to guess that no matter what shoe is wearing, that one that he duck hooked to the left and hit the lineman in the chest, he'd have been better off being barefoot on that one. But Dan will be fine. Dan is very competitive. Dan's a hard worker, and I'm not concerned with him. He'll do just fine. He'll come back.
Is Hubert out for the year, or can he play?
No, he played in the last game.
Sit on there, he didn't.
On where?
Your release, it said he didn't, so.
Yeah, you have to take that up with the short guy walking around here.
I wasn't at that.
No, I know you weren't. No, he played. He played in the last game. Sure did.